Call the Budget Committee meeting Thursday, August 19th. Madam Chairman, or Madam Secretary, roll call, please. Here.
Present.
Here.
Present.
Here.
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 Item 3 in bullets is consideration of making recommendation with reference to the following requests from special service districts for grant funding from the Gaming Fund. 3.1, Ward 1 Fire Protection District Number 1, $6,500 for the purchase of 4 XTS handheld radios. I tell you what, let's take them individually. I need a motion on 3.1.
So move.
Second.
A motion by
Question on
Mr. Guidry and second by Ms. Griffin on 3.1. Dr. Mackey, discussion.
I'm just assuming that all of these are connected with any other organization. In other words, they can call other with it too. In other words, it's not one of those deals where this works only with this.
Right.
Okay.
Yes, sir.
That's fine. Thank you.
Any other discussion on 3.1? Any objection? Hearing none, 3.1 passes. 3.2, Ward 4 Waterworks District Number 4 of Ward 4.
3.2. Second.
$120,000 for the purpose of upgrading the existing water mains on Mims Road to Miller Avenue to Johnson Street. I got a motion by Ms. Trimmy, second by Ms. Griffin on 3.2. Ms. Griffin.
Thank you, sir. For 3.2, I think this is needed, and I would ask my colleagues to consider supporting this for the Waterworks District Number 4. There is a great need to upgrade the existing water mains that they have, especially on Mims Road and Miller Avenue to Johnson Street and further. And it's needed. We very seldom have to help them, and our citizens in that area would really benefit from this. Thank you.
Thank you. And to reiterate what Ms. Griffin's saying, the fire protection will definitely be upgraded by having these larger lines, and this could be the phase 1 of possibly another loop line that would loop the entire system together. And this is going to come from the large gaming fund out of Ward 4. So,
that is right.
Mr. Anderpont.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I just want to comment on one thing, and I think this is very indicative of the police bureau trying to assist service districts that in some cases can't help themselves, and that's what we are in the business of doing, is helping those who can't help themselves. And I think it's very admirable of you to request the funds.
Well, thank you, sir. And Mr. McMillan worked very hard with me trying to secure them because the area is in need of it. So thank you very much.
And Ms. Griffin and I do work together with that water board to see that the services that water district is taken care of. And it's always good when you have two jurors working on a project like this together, and she was the lead, and I'm happy to be a part of it with her. So I have a motion second. Any other discussion? Any objection? Hearing none, 3.2 carries. 3.3, Ward 7
Move
Fire
on 3.3.
Protection District Number 1, $12,800 matching funds for the purchase of 2 thermal imaging cameras. I have a motion by Mr. Hassan and a second by Ms. Trimmy. Discussion on 3.3. Any objection? Hearing none, 3.3 carries. That's 3 in all bullets. Item number 4, is there any other matters for consideration of this budget meeting at this time?
Move to adjourn.
Second.
A motion by Ms. Trimmy to adjourn, second by Dr. Mackey. All in favor? We stand adjourned.
I like the color. See.
(19) 2010 has now been called to order. We have the invocation by Mr. McMillan, and the pledge will follow. Please stand.
Thank you, Mr. Guidry. I'd like to call Pastor Rob Tibbetts of the Crossroad Baptist Church of Vinton to come up and give our invocation, then I'll follow with a pledge.
Thank you. Let's pray. God, I thank you for men and women who are called by you and charged by you to lead our country, to lead our parish and our state. Lord, I just pray for these men and women tonight, that you will give them wisdom in the dealing with our issues in the parish. And Father, I just pray that you will just have your way in this meeting. We thank you for the love that you show us every day, and we thank you for Jesus Christ, who means the world to us. And it's in his name we pray. Amen.
Amen. Amen. Raise the flag. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible,
call, Madam Secretary.
Here. 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 Here.
Present.
Here. Here.
Present.
Here.
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 Present.
Here.
Thank you, Madam Secretary. Again, we want to welcome everyone for coming out tonight. We know that we've got a little bit of a large crowd, but we hope that everybody can get in and be comfortable tonight and everything. And we want to ask that if anybody here that has a pager or a cell phone, we would ask that you would put that device to silence so that we can conduct our meeting in an orderly fashion. And with that, we do appreciate that. With that, we'll move on to item number 5. Take appropriate actions on application for liquor and beer permits. Mr. Vickers.
Mr. President, we have 3 applications before you tonight, and we would like to recommend to you that they all be approved. However, one application in the name of Vinton Golf and Travel LLC does have opposition.
Okay, Mr. Vickers.
Mr. President, I move that we separate these and vote on them separately.
Okay. Can I get a second? I have a second by Mr. Stelly. Is there any discussion? Any objection? So move.
I make a motion that we approve all the ones other than the ones that you want to pull there, Mr. Hassett.
I second that.
Yes. I have a motion by Mr. McMillan and a second by Mr. Size. And we'll go ahead to,
Close that, vote on it.
any discussion? Any objection? We do have discussion. Mr. Stelly.
The ones that you're voting are they existing and just renewals? Is that what they are?
Mr. Vickers.
Let me state the ones that I think that we'll be voting on. The first one is in Ward 1, SA Investments of Lake Charles LLC, Steve Sanders, member, and then a special events permit that has been previously issued to the Ala Capri Casino.
Thank you.
Those 2.
That's the ones.
Okay. All right then. At this time, we'll go to Vinton and Travel LLC.
And we pass.
vote on
Vote on that other one.
those 2.
Okay,
My
those two.
motion.
Vote on
I have
those 2, Mr.
You
President.
got my motion.
I have a motion by Mr. McMillan and a second by Mr. Stelly. Is there any discussion? Any objection? Hearing none, those 2 items pass. At this time, we'll move on to the second item on that, which would be Vinton Golf and Travel LLC.
Yes. I'm going to yield to Mr. Smith.
Legal counsel, Mr. Smith.
Knowing that there was some discussion about this when I did some research this week, I have looked at the permit, and the permit which has been filed, it meets every requirement that we have under our ordinance. So technically, we cannot deny it. Now, the question is, there's some question about what activities are going to be engaged in at this place. I think the name of it is the Gentleman's Club. There is a state obscenity statute, and I'll cite it for everybody. It's 14:106, and it is almost 3 pages, which prohibits any kind of lewd behavior, dress, and so on. Those same provisions are already in our ordinance. We have in our ordinance the provisions that it says here that we will not grant a permit which allows or permits the disturbance of the peace or obscenity or any lewd, immoral, or improper entertainment, conduct, or practices on the licensed premises. And then we go down to Part B. It says the following acts or conduct on licensed premises are deemed to constitute lewd, immoral, or improper entertainment as prohibited by this section, and therefore no on-sale permit for beverages of low alcoholic content shall be held at any premises where such conduct or acts are permitted. And then it goes on to list essentially the same thing that is in the state obscenity statute. All of these acts are prohibited. So they have not indicated that any of those acts are going to be permitted or used. It does not prohibit entertainment. It doesn't prohibit dancing, but you can't do it nude and all that kind of business. I'm not going to read it because it's very specific language in here about what's allowed and not allowed. Now, there are 3 of those permits already existing in Calcasieu Parish. One of them happens to be by the same applicant. To my knowledge, we have had no complaints. I'm not I'm not saying what kind of activity is conducted. I'm just saying there have been no complaints. But if there is a complaint, the state police or the sheriff's department can make arrests based either on the state obscenity statute or on our ordinance. More specifically, however, if there's a violation of our ordinance, it says, violation of this section by a retail dealer's agent, associate, employee, representative, or servant shall be considered the retail dealer's act for purposes of suspension or revocation of the permit. So, based on our requirements to grant the permit, you must do so. If you do not, then I suspect strongly that the applicant can file suit against the police jury for having been arbitrary and capricious in the denial. Now, once granted, if there is any activity and a complaint is made and the sheriff's department or the state police go out and issue a citation, that would be grounds for revocation or suspension by the planning department. I hope that's a full explanation. If anybody has any questions, I just don't want you all to buy into a lawsuit.
Thank you, Mr. Allen. We do have discussion by jury. Mr. Hassan.
Thank you, Mr. President. Mr. Smith, there's nothing in our procedures, statute, or anything that allows for public input on a liquor license. I know they have to advertise, they have to post a notice, which leads a lot to believe that that's the opportunity for people to oppose.
Well, what happens is locally that they do have to run advertisements locally as well as at the state level, basically putting us on notice that they intend to apply for a permit. And that is done in the official journal of the state as well as the official journal of the parish. I am in receipt of the petition, and I have it here before you. It has quite a few number of names that have signed it. We had one of our staff members count. There's over 900 names on this petition.
Okay. Yeah.
Go ahead.
The process, from what I understand, just clarify this, they come to us. Once we grant it, then they have to go to the state. It takes both entities to issue a license, correct?
That is correct.
Now, go ahead.
The way it works is that the local has to make a recommendation first, and then the state will make their recommendation. So we have to act on it, be the first person to take action on it, and subsequently the state will take action on it.
Now, the state does allow for, if I'm looking at something that your office sent me, if there is opposition, it can be filed with the state, and they are required to have a hearing.
That's correct.
We do not have that in our authority or in our statute or anything. Is that correct?
That is a state statute. Mr. Smith has a copy of it.
My question for you, Mr. Smith, is, given this situation that there is a petition that will be filed with the state, we have no way of having that hearing. Can we defer this till after that process takes place?
My understanding is that the state will not entertain a petition until the local authority has essentially made a recommendation that it be granted. And what this says here, and this is the statute that's applicable, you may have a copy. Any person may oppose the issuance of any permit by filing with the commission a sworn petition of opposition within 35 days of the date the application for the state permit was received. This petition is timely filed. The commissioner shall withhold the state permit and immediately notify the proper local authority, who shall withhold the local permit. The commissioner shall summon the applicant and hold a hearing on the petition of opposition in the manner provided by this chapter. So that the remedy for opposition, as I read this, is at the state level. The minute that's filed, they say, hold it, and they call us and they say, hold it. We can't issue one until they give us approval anyway.
Okay. Yeah.
Go ahead, Mr.
Thank you. Just to clarify any misunderstandings, that just so everyone is also aware, this did not have to go through a zoning hearing, correct?
The property is properly zoned right now, C3 commercial, and the use is a permitted use.
What all falls under C3 commercial? Just give examples.
C3 commercial is our I guess, in terms of, it would be something like, it's our heaviest commercial classification. It would be something like a shopping center. It can be anything. You know, at this location was a previous location where they had cockfighting. And that little quarter in the Toomey area has commercial really on both sides of it. The Longhorns on one side, and there are other commercial buildings on the west side of it. So all of that is zone C3 commercial.
Okay, thank you. That's all I have.
Thank you, Mr. Hassan. Is there any discussion by the jury?
I don't have a
We do
discussion.
have discussion. I'm sorry, Mr. Landry.
I'm sorry, I just can't stand it. I got one thing, in 2 words, I can tell you what'll fix this for you in the future. You ready? Vision Calcasieu. Am I wrong, Mr. Vickers? You plan ahead of what you won't wear? Put that before everybody? I thought they were going to hang us out here under that oak tree by the cannon. Had to have guards in here. Here you are a couple years later. Vision Calcasieu. That would have done it. That's all. I probably said enough.
Thank you, Mr. Landry. Mr. Andrew Point.
Thank you, Mr. President. Let me preface by saying Vision Calcasieu is a matter of opinion, I guess. But that being said, I need to address the counselor. What you're telling, if I understand correctly, that they are in their rights to do and to ask for what they have asked for. Okay. Now we're coming down to the permitting of the alcohol. We have to act on that tonight.
My guess is if they have fulfilled every requirement that we have to grant this, if we do not, we would be, you can delay it, but I think we would be subject to them filing a lawsuit over here, and it would be basically a mandamus to make us do what it is that they feel that they are entitled to receive. And that's, by the way, an expedited hearing. Yeah.
Well, as I appreciate it, Mr. Hassan was wanting to defer until they went to the state, and you're saying, obviously, we can't do that.
Well, the state's going to say, we're not going to do anything until you all give us a recommendation.
So it comes right back to us anyway.
Yes, sir. It starts here. May not end here, but it starts here.
Well, I guess the bottom line is, like it or not, we really don't have a choice, do we?
That's my opinion. That's why it's not always so fun to be a lawyer.
And that's why you make $7 an hour, will give us all this good information. He answered my question, so I know what I got to do. Thank you, Mr. President.
Thank you, Mr. Andrew Point. Mr. Hassan.
Thank you, Mr. President. I don't want this to be a debate on Vision Calcasieu, but I never saw where Vision Calcasieu called for separate zoning in a C3 by the nature of the business. So that's the only thing that could change this situation. Vision Calcasieu would declare that whole area commercial. There again, anything that could go in there could go in there. So, but this isn't a debate on Vision Calcasieu. This is about this issue. So that's all I have to say.
Go ahead, Mr. Landry.
Thank you. I agree. I mean, it's not, but that's not entirely correct. Vision Calcasieu has overlay zones, and in overlay zones, you can be very specific of what's going to go there and what's not. And we have overlay zones in South Lake Charles.
Thank you, Mr. Landry. Mr. Spell.
Thank you, Mr. President. Mr. Smith, this is more of a procedural question. I guess something kind of twitches with me when, if we have an applicant and they meet every requirement of permit application, then they must be granted the permit. Why do we even vote on it? I mean, if we have to give it to them, why is it coming before this body for a vote?
Because this body is the one who has to issue or not issue. If the planning department has a deficiency, they would say we have 3 alcohol permits and we recommend you do not grant this one, and he would give you the reasons why. One of the requirements would not have been fulfilled. And I think, but he can't really issue it. You all have to issue it. And then it goes to the state with your recommendation that it be issued.
I guess my question is, where does the legislative discretion come into play if they have met all of the requirements?
Well, there's some things in which there's no legislative discretion, and this just happens to be one of them. If we have a process and we say you must do this, you must do this, you must do this, you must do this, and you're entitled to a permit, and they meet those, then we're arbitrary and capricious if we don't grant it.
Okay. Thank you, Mr. Smith. Thank you, Mr. President.
Ms. Bell. Is there any other comments by the jury?
I think we have some speakers.
I have one, if you don't mind.
Ms. Trimmy?
We had a situation I can talk about, which called it Spit, Quick, or Puke. That was the name of the place. I mean, that's what I'm calling it. But it was, what was the name of that place? East of DeQuincy? Huh?
Golly, don't ask me.
But we called it Spit, Quick, or Puke. There you go. Well, they had, we had to give them a permit. And this is east of DeQuincy. And, I mean, there were people that got their head knocked off when they just walked in the door. I mean, didn't do nothing, just walked in the door and just, somebody just, bam, we get them. And it was a really tough situation. And the music would keep the people up all night. And it was, the parish said you had to double insulate, you had to do this, you had to do this, you had to do that. And I had no choice because of this law right here of the state. I had no choice. We had to, give them a permit, a license. But the good news is they did everything else to themselves. And the state did come in because they were not following the guidelines and pull their license, and then the parish pulled their license, and now the DeQuincy Fire Department, the Ward 6 Fire Department in DeQuincy, use it as a practice fire, and it was a wonderful day. It was a wonderful day. So there are times that we do have to do things as an elected official that you don't want to do. It's not something we like. But when the law says you have to do this, you have to let it run its course. So I just wanted to throw that out there, that I did have a situation in our community, and it did work itself out, but it took a while. I'm not going to say that the people were happy until it was burnt down. But Jerry was there to take pictures when it bit the dust. Wasn't you there? So just letting y'all know that this too shall pass. Whatever happens will pass. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Trimmy. Mr. McMillan?
Thank you, Mr. President. I'd like to maybe address our council. A lot of times, is there any opportunity, and this will, from what I'm hearing, we have to go ahead and do this and move forward with it, but would there be any opportunity for this jury in this parish to put a moratorium on any more of these coming to our parish? Is that something we could enact at a later date?
The answer to that, I suppose, is yes. It would have to be pretty carefully crafted because we have prohibited about everything you can think of. Now, here's the problem. The Supreme Court, I forgot which justice had an obscenity case before it, talking about pornography. And the judge said, well, I can't define it, but I know it when I see it. And that came out of the Supreme Court. And that's kind of like what we have here. I can't think of any more specific language than this obscenity statute provides. And it is, any state police officer can go out there, and we prohibit the same thing in our statute. We prohibit that behavior. So if they open this gentleman's club, it seems to me they're going to be on notice from this hearing and everything else because we give them a copy of our ordinance that says what we can't do. But it's very, very difficult to try to legislate those kind of things. You can regulate them. I can tell you what they do in Lafayette. They have a statute over there, a Lafayette ordinance that says, well, you can't do this, except if you really want to, you come in, you get a permit to have exotic dancers and all that kind of thing. Well, we already have bar cards that are required by people who work in establishments that sell alcoholic beverages. So presumably if these people are employees, are going to have a bar card and come in here. Everybody who works there has it. So we've done just about as much as we can do at this level.
And that also includes the dancers there. They will have to have a bar card as well. So that not only the employees, but the dancers will have to have a bar card and go through a background check and so forth. And the purpose of really having the bar card is to try to cut down on illegal activity, where you have good people that'll be working in these establishments, and having background checks on them and so forth to keep drugs and that type of thing out of these clubs.
Thank you, Mr. Vickers.
Thank you, Mr. President.
Thank you, Mr. McMillan. Any discussion by the jury? Because we do have two speakers at this time. I'd like to call those two speakers up. It's Mr. Rick Norman here. Please come forward. Mr. Rick Norman. Okay, thank you, Mr. Norman. We have Mr. Robert Tiblitz. Please come forward. Please state your name and address for the record, please.
My name is Rob Tibbetts. My address is 1779 Highway 109 South, Vinton, Louisiana. I'd like to thank our police jury for allowing me this opportunity to address your group on behalf of almost 1,000 Vinton residents. I'm grateful for the support of our city mayor, our city council, many of whom are here with me tonight. My name is Rob Tibbetts, and for the last 17 years, I've had the privilege of serving as the pastor of Crossroads Baptist Church in Vinton, Louisiana. I grew up in Houston, Texas, where strip clubs like this littered almost every street corner. I've seen firsthand the sexual predators that these joints attract. And let's just say that many are not the type that you would want coming into your neighborhood. Just last night, I had a member of my church family tell me that she met a man of questionable morals who laughed at our efforts to stop this club from coming to our town. He sarcastically mocked, "Well, at least this club will protect the women of Vinton from guys like me. I'll just go there and find me a girl." Is that the kind of person that you would want coming into your neighborhood? Is that the kind of establishment that you want down the street from your house? This establishment will be located on the same street in which I live. I've witnessed the devastating effects that these clubs have on families whose members get lured in by the promise of pleasure. And yet there's nothing pleasurable about a mom having to explain to her children that dad's not going to be coming back home because he violated his wedding vows in an establishment like this. We've all seen what happens to society as a whole as families fall apart. The cost to society is astronomical, not to mention the psychological and emotional cost to those involved. I've met women who have been promised a way out of poverty through this line of work, only to later discover themselves enslaved, trapped, and broken to the point that they see no way out. These types of establishments degrade and demoralize women, and they do nothing to evaluate or to elevate the status of women. In fact, they do just the opposite. In 1988, I left the big city of Houston to relocate to southwest Louisiana. For several years, I lived here in Lake Charles, where I met my wife, and we married. For years, I passed by the small town of Vinton on my way back to Houston to visit my family, never knowing what a wonderful place Vinton was. I had heard all the stereotypes and the degrading jokes told around this city about the people that lived in that part of our parish. But I am here tonight to tell you that is not the Vinton that I have come to love and to call home. In the past 17 years, God's blessed my wife and I with 3 children and given us the opportunity to call Vinton our house, our home. Vinton has provided us a perfect place to raise a family. It's family-oriented. It's comprised of a close-knit group of people who have figured out what life is all about. The residents of Vinton are some of the most hardworking, upright people that I know. I know we have a few colorful characters that sometimes make the news for being stupid. But other than that, most part, our people are very incredible and make a great place to live and to serve. Having lived and served in other parts of Calcasieu Parish, I know firsthand how easy it is to think that that's their problem and not mine. But tonight I want to ask you to look at the names on those petitions. Almost 1,000 families that are asking you to stand up for them. Almost 1,000 people in our community begging you to do something to protect their families, protect their future, to protect the town that they love to call home. I ask you tonight not to insult us by saying it's not your problem, but it's ours. Not to insult us by wringing your hands and saying that you don't like this any more than we do, but that there's nothing you can do about it. Please don't insult us by hiding behind the argument that you might get sued if you don't grant a liquor license. I know that what you have tonight may be some politician's dream situation. You can express publicly your opposition to such a club, but then claim that there's no choice but to approve the license. Some say that we need to approve it so we don't spend taxpayers' money. on a lawsuit, but I can't speak for anyone else. But I can't think of anything else I'd rather my money be spent on than fighting the immorality that's associated with strip clubs like this. There's not one person in this room that does not know that what goes on in these establishments is immoral. Even the owners of the business know that it's immoral and it's unacceptable, and that's exactly why they've deceptively devised the LLC of Vinton Golf and Travel. I don't know about you, but I've yet to see a golf course in Vinton. They do that so that when a wife views the credit card statement, she's not aware of where her husband has been. It's done to provide businesses a way to cover up exactly where their entertainment dollars are being spent. The presence of this immorality is further evidenced by the tall wooden privacy fence that surrounds their entire property. Evil likes to be exposed, or it never likes to be exposed, and so it seeks to intimidate those that would expose it and extinguish it. The fact is, our taxpayer money will be spent. It'll be spent up front, changing the laws, fixing the problem that we face here tonight, where our citizens have no voice whatsoever in a situation like this. Or we will spend our taxpayer money later on down the road cleaning up the messes that are inherently associated with establishments like this. Please don't insult us by telling us you're powerless to do anything. You've been charged with the responsibility of serving and protecting the families of the entire parish, and that includes Vinton as well. This is not just our problem, it's your problem as well. You promised us during your campaigns that you would lead our parish forwards, not backwards to the nightclubs and the strip joints of the 50s and the 60s. I've heard the tales of places like Luann's and the State Line, the Big Oaks, and the Palomino nightclub, which used to litter the first few miles of our beautiful state. Do we want that sort of thing to once again welcome visitors to this great state? You promised to lead us, and we're asking you tonight to do just that. Each of you boast of your association with a Christian church on the Calcasieu Parish Police Jury website. You've made public your faith in God, your commitment to morality, your commitment to make the difficult decisions when that time comes. Now is that time. It won't be easy, but real leadership seldom is. You see, men and women of renown are known for what they did in the face of great opposition and overwhelming odds. And to reward them for persevering under overwhelming odds, we have made them our heroes. We need men and women who will stand with us and do what's right, not just what's politically prudent. Throughout the history of our great nation, when there was something that threatened the good of our communities or even society as a whole, real leaders emerged. They didn't hunt for political cover. They stood for what was right, and they let the chips fall where they may. They laid their careers and sometimes even their lives on the line for what was decent, for what was moral, and for what was upright. Today, our nation's crying out for leaders of that caliber to rise once again. I believe you guys are those leaders. Your faith in God and your commitment to our parish is foundational for what we base our decisions upon. It's how we decide what's acceptable and unacceptable. And if our zoning process is not adequate to protect us from these kinds of establishments, then it's your responsibility to change that. It's your responsibility to put in place some kind of protection for this kind of stuff. We've got to do what we can do to protect our citizens. It's time for leaders like you to speak up and to stand up and to do something to protect them. You guys are smart people. You're problem solvers. You're men and women who possess the collective wisdom for solving problems just like this. I urge you to protect our small community from those that would seek to bring their immoral, disgusting, and perverted form of entertainment to Southwest Louisiana. I wish tonight that you'd vote to deny them a liquor license. But if you won't do that, I pray that at least you would postpone this decision until you have the opportunity to close some of the loopholes in the zoning regulations that effectively silence the voice of us, the people of this parish. Problem solvers solve problems. They don't wring their hands and say, I wish I could do something. They step up and they do it. I know that tonight's a night that folks want you to approve these things, but guys, even when we see NASA with a space shuttle on the launch pad and something goes wrong, they scrub the mission, they fix the problem before they put their people in danger. Does it cost them money? Absolutely. But it's worth it. And we expect that from NASA, and we expect that from our public officials. So please, I urge you to put your minds together and find a way to solve our problem. and until you can, scrub the mission, no matter what it costs. Lead us to a brighter tomorrow, not back to the dark days of yesteryear. Stand for our families, please. Be a voice for the women and the children that will be directly impacted by this vile industry. Please don't insult the people of Southwest Louisiana by saying there's nothing you can do. If there was nothing that you could do, you would not be asked to cast a vote tonight. This decision could have been made by some desk clerk sitting in a small cubicle in some parish building. You do have a voice, and you do have a say-so. I pray tonight you use it for good and not for evil. I appreciate your time, and I pray that you'll do what real leaders do. Set everything aside for those that they lead, and then lead on. Thank you, sir.
Thank you, Mr. Robb. We appreciate that. At this time, I would ask that, Madam Chair, if there's any other discussion, not, I would ask that Madam Secretary would ask for a roll call vote. There is no motion. The Chair entertain a motion on this item.
Move to approve.
Can I get a second? Second. Mr. Landry, and seconded by Mr. Andrew Pont. Is there any other discussion? This time we entertain a roll call vote, Madam Secretary.
Yes.
Mr. Gray? No. Mr. Collins?
No.
Mr. Farnham?
No.
Mrs. Griffin?
Yes.
Mr. Hassan?
No.
Mr. Landry?
Yes.
Dr. Mackey?
Yes.
Mr. McMillan?
No.
Mr. Scott?
No.
Mr. Spell?
No.
Mr. Stelly?
Yes.
Mr. Sias?
Yes.
Mrs. Trimming?
No.
6 yeses and 8 noes. The motion failed. Therefore, the application was not approved.
All right, Madam Secretary. We do have discussion. Mr. Stelly.
Mr. Smith, now where does this put us as a?
Yeah.
I can't speak for their counsel, but I presume he will immediately file a suit for mandamus to require you all to pass it. You see, the First Amendment guarantees the right and the freedom of expression, and so you can regulate behavior, but you can't regulate morality. I'm very sorry to say that, but that's just where the Constitution leaves us. And so I presume that we'll have a lawsuit, and I'll defend it, and we'll lose it, and go on from there.
Mr. Scott.
And I'll agree with Mr. Smith 100%, but if you want something, you got to work at getting it. So, that's just my personal opinion. So if they want it, they just got to work for it. Thank you.
Is there any other discussion? We do have discussion. Mr. Stelly.
I was just wondering if anybody's ever been to the beach lately.
In what?
To the beach. To see what kind of outfits are worn on the beach. And how does that differ in any way from what these people are asking for? The zoning is right. I'm not saying I even go to these places. But just to tell you that we have put ourselves in a situation here that, is going to come back to bite us. I guarantee you. But anyway, thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Stelly. Mr. Spell.
My decision, we can get into issues of right and wrong all day, but really where my decision come from is we have 1,000 people asking us to represent them. We can debate morality, right and wrong. We can do that all day long, but as a elected legislative official, I've been asked to represent people. And there are 1,000 people asking us to represent their view. That is the basis of my decision. Thank you, Mr. President.
Thank you, Mr. Spell. Mr. Landry.
There's 190,000 that weren't here.
Mr. President, if we don't have any other comments, I
have a few
call to
minutes.
close this up.
Mr. Andrew Point.
Thank you, Mr. President, and I'll be very, very brief. It's not an easy decision to vote yes for something that you don't believe in. But we do have legal counsel here who is employed and hired to make recommendations and to interpret the law for us. We are a land of laws, whether we like it or we dislike it. Now, I voted with my mind, but my heart was with the gentleman who made his presentation. There comes a point in time, folks, where we have to make tough decisions, and this was one of them. Now, you can hide your head in the sand like the ostrich, but let me tell you what, doesn't change the facts at all. We have put ourselves in a position now where now we're probably going to be sued. And who's going to pay for that? The taxpayers who weren't here tonight. Thank you, Mr. President.
Thank you, Mr. Andrew Point. Any other discussion by the jury? We do have another discussion. Mr. Size.
I just want to say that let the record be said that I am in total agreement with Mr. Andrew Point.
Thank you, Mr. Size. This time we'll move on to item number 6. Consideration approval of payments on all current invoices.
Second.
I have a motion by Mr. Andrew Point, a second by Ms. Griffin. Is there any discussion? Any objection? Hearing none, item number 6 passes. Item number 7, presentation of proclamation proclaiming Saturday, August 14, 2010 as Airborne and Marie Wise Day in Calcasieu Parish in honor of his 90th birthday on 8/14 and her upcoming 90th birthday on 5/27, and acknowledgement their very successful careers and lifetime achievements. Ms. Trimmy.
Thank you, Mr. President. I'd like to ask General Urban Wise to come with me. Follow me wherever I go. I'd like to introduce to you General Urban Wise. He's awesome. I've known him most of my life. My mom and my dad, my dad Horace Lynn Jones and my mother Gloria. He and Urban and his wife Marie, and Marie's not with us tonight, but she would like to be here, but she physically can't be here. And I have a proclamation that I'd like to read. Whereas Urban and Marie will celebrate Urban will be celebrating his 90th, and Marie will be, that was on August the 14th, and Marie will be celebrating her 90th on May the 27th, 2011, respectively. After being active in the newspaper business for more than 50 years, which they own over 20 newspapers in the state of Louisiana. Whereas they were former publishers of daily newspapers in Sulphur, Leesville, and DeRidder, and 20 weekly papers. They retired in 1988. And whereas they have encouraged students to enter the journalism field by establishing journalism scholarships for students entering Northwestern and McNeese State University, and by endorsing a journalism chair at Northwestern, where they both graduated. And whereas General Wise served in the Air Force during World War II, serving in Europe, and he attained the rank of Major General, and had 29 years of active and reserve duty, as well as serving as Adjutant General, Louisiana's Adjutant General, from 1964 to 1968. And whereas General Wise is the author of 21 books, I've asked him to give me the last one he wrote, on history, genealogy, travel, and the outdoors. Whereas General Wise wrote a column on Marie Wise wrote a column on genealogy, which was published in a number of Louisiana papers for over 25 years. And whereas in retirement, General and Mrs. Wise enjoy opening their gardens and grounds to the public in the spring where the azaleas are in the bloom, and also the dogwood that he would go up and get every year. For 10 years he did that. He could identify them and he would go pull them up right out of the ground. He's brought me tons of them. And now, therefore, I'm going to say I, Kevin Guidry, but me, I'm going to say me too.
That's okay, Ms. Trimmy.
Sandy Trimmy, President of the Calcasieu Parish Police Jury, do hereby proclaim Saturday, August the 14th, 2010, as General Urban and Marie Wise Day in the parish of Calcasieu in honor of their 90th birthdays on August the 14th, 2010, and May the 27th, 2011, respectively, and do hereby urge all citizens to extend their best wishes, appreciation, and recognition to them for their many achievements and contributions, not only to Southwest Louisiana, but to the state of Louisiana. He has always represented us well. So I just want to thank you, Urban.
Thank you.
God bless you. I'd like for you to say a few words, and then we'll get a couple of pictures, okay?
Well, Sandy, I want to thank you, and I want to thank the members of this police jury for this honor. I've spent most of my 90 years here in this parish, and it's been good to Marie and I appreciate the honor, and it's been a pleasure to be with you tonight, and thank every one of you.
Mr. Guidry.
We need a picture for the DeQuincy News. Kevin, come back one more time. This is very important.
Yes, ma'am.
This is General Wise's brother, Jerry Wise, who still owns the DeQuincy News and the Cameron Pilot.
Thank you.
President Guidry, if I could, I'd like to just address that General Wise lives in District 14. I'm very proud to have him there, and Miss Trimmy's been with him as a friend for a number of years. But we have a drainage problem in the High Hope Road area because of a ridge line that goes through General Wise's property, and he so kindly has given us a right to go through the Weiss Ridge, as we call it. So hopefully within the next year, we'll be able to drain the High Hope Road property going through General Weiss. He's a great man and a great man for our community. General Weiss, thank you again.
We do appreciate that, Mr. McMillan.
Okay.
Kevin, on that next speaker, you give them a minute, please.
At this time, we'll go ahead and move on. I see Ms. Trimmy's kind of still congratulating, but we'll let Ms. Trimmy go ahead and finish up her.
You go ahead and start your meeting. Sandy might be there all night.
Item number 8, presentation by Ms. Deborah K. DePedo, MD, Louisiana Models for Change, Systems Reform for Juvenile Justice, with reference to programs being sponsored by the Police Jury Office of Juvenile Justice Service and the John D. and Catherine T. MacArthur Foundation. Mr. Dane Boland, please state your name and position here with the parish.
My name is Dane Boland, and currently I'm the Director of the Office of Juvenile Justice Services. I'm here to introduce Dr. DePredo, but before that I want to let you know that we're in our 3rd year MacArthur Foundation work, and it's been a journey and a great ride. You're going to hear some good things tonight about the work that we're doing in Calcasieu Parish and also the state when it comes to working with families. But I've kind of asked, before I introduce Dr. DePredo, that with several of our staff here, so when you hear all these good things going on, it's not Dane, it's not Dr. DePredo, it's the people who are actually doing the work, and I'm glad they show up tonight. Anyway, I want to introduce Dr. Deborah DePredo. She's the project director for Models for Change, and she's also a child and forensic psychiatrist through LSU. And so I'll go ahead and introduce Dr. DePredo.
Please state your name and address for the record, please. Thank you.
My name is Deborah DePredo, and my address is 2252 Myrtledale Avenue in Baton Rouge, Louisiana. Thank you, Dane, and thank you, Mr. President and the council for inviting me tonight, and the parish president. I'm glad that I'm here to help you celebrate something else in addition to General Wise's birthday and the proclamation. I wanted to tell you a little briefly about what the MacArthur Foundation has been doing here in Lake Charles and the things that you should be very proud of that are happening in Calcasieu Parish. Because you may or may not know it, but you're becoming nationally renowned for many of the initiatives that are taking place right here in Calcasieu Parish. So my name is Deborah DePredo. I'm a child psychiatrist, and currently I'm overseeing all the efforts that the MacArthur Foundation are doing in Louisiana. The MacArthur Foundation is a multi-million-dollar foundation, private foundation in Chicago, and they have decided to dedicate $10 million to Louisiana over 5 years to develop best practice juvenile justice programs. LSU Health Sciences Center, where I work, is the lead agency, and we're working on 3 areas. And I wanted to explain that a little bit to you so you'll understand where Dane and his programming comes in. Something called alternatives to formal processing. In Louisiana, historically, we've sent a lot of kids to court. A lot of kids go to court not necessarily because they have many serious public safety issues. It's more to get services. That's ended up costing our state a lot, and it's ended up putting children in jails and detention facilities and correctional facilities to get services and not really address them very well. Many times they aren't with their home, they're not with their family, they're in out-of-home placements just to get services, and oftentimes when they come back, they don't do very well when they get back home. So the MacArthur Foundation recognized that Louisiana would like to invest our time and money and expertise such as yours in really developing very good programs for children in the community. Because our children, we want them to grow up to be taxpayers, right? We want them to go to school. We want them to not drop out of school, not have public safety issues, and to be successful citizens. But we never had the tools to do that. So the MacArthur Foundation has given us money and consultants and technical assistance. But the first step was to find a really good place to try these things out, and that's where you come in. About 5 years ago, the MacArthur Foundation went all over Louisiana looking at where are the very best places in Louisiana that could develop these promising and best programs. And they went all over the state. They interviewed many, many people in many places. And when they came to Calcasieu Parish, they met your district attorney, your judges, your parish administration, Dane, who was the head of the Department of Juvenile Services, and his staff, and the many people who work for you. And we could see through the leadership and the collaboration that you have here in Calcasieu Parish and the support of you, the police jury, who the Department of Juvenile Services is under, really was the perfect site to give Dane and his staff the money and the technical assistance to develop some of these programs. And that's exactly what he's done. So one area is we're looking at how do you assess children before they come into the court system. Number one, to see, do they really need to be in the court system? If they don't, let's find where they need to be. If they do, then let's do that. But let's be sure. A court system costs a lot of money, as you know, and it doesn't necessarily address all the problems that a child has. The second, or a fancy word, evidence-based community services. It's a fancy word for saying, let's do things that actually work. Evidence-based means research-based. We know that if you put a kid into this program, they'll actually get better. They'll start going to school. They'll hang out with better peers. Their behavior improves. Why is this a breakthrough? I'm not really sure, but as a physician, sometimes I look at this as saying, if you had high blood pressure and you went to a doctor that gave you medication that people used 20 years ago and your blood pressure never got better, but the doctor said, well, that's all I do. I really don't do anything else, kind of take it or leave it. Would you keep going to that doctor? I don't think you would, and I wouldn't either. That's what we were doing to our kids in the juvenile justice system. We were using practices that people were doing 10 and 20 years ago, and it just doesn't work, but we kept doing them. Why? Because the people are nice. They're nice people. Don't they know what they're doing? Well, they are nice people, but we have to look at the outcomes. You want our children to get better, just like you want your high blood pressure to get better, your heart condition, your cancer. You want the best. So, number one, why pay money for programs that don't work? Why pay money for programs that may increase children's risk of public safety? There are some programs, believe it or not, where you put very low-level risk kids with high-level risk kids, and it actually makes them worse. So there are some ways that we actually make kids worse juvenile delinquents. We got very good at that in Louisiana. In the year 2000, the Department of Justice sued our state because we incarcerated more kids than any other state in the United States, 2,000 kids. And we were churning them out, and they would come out, commit crimes, and go to adult. So we really needed to figure out a better way. That is to do things that are more cost-effective to do things that save parishes money, to put kids in the court system and on probation that really need it, that are a threat to public safety, and that thereby having manageable numbers of those kids, you can actually monitor them and protect public safety. And finally, the MacArthur Foundation was also very interested in disproportionate minority contact. In other words, why are so many youth of color in the juvenile system? Why are so many poor people in the juvenile system? Why is that? And are there ways that we can address those problems as well? So the answer to that was to start looking at all the kids. Where are they coming from? What do they look like? What age are they? What race? What sex? Is there a predominance so that we can focus on those things? And I will say that Dane and the Department of Juvenile Services here has become a leader in that and is now recognized nationally in the work you're doing here. Finally, just as a sidebar, when MacArthur first started here 5 years ago, believe it or not, we didn't have a juvenile defender system in Louisiana. I think every other state did but us. And that's now been implemented. People specialize in juvenile court, which we didn't have that before. The law schools around the state are starting to train their students how to do that, and the state is as well. So that's come a long way too. So we have, these are all the sites around Louisiana that are doing MacArthur work. And I really like this map just because it's fancy and it's cute. To tell you a little bit about what Dane is doing, when the foundation came here, they really wanted to award Calcasieu a grant. You had just put together your youth planning board, which I must say is one of the models for the rest of the state because you have people on it from all the right agencies and all the right people who can collaborate to make things happen. So you were awarded a grant to develop a best practice model that other places in Louisiana can use, and you've done it. Now we take what you're doing, and Dane graciously goes all over the state of Louisiana training other planning boards. And we're also going to be putting the show on the road nationally. And the reason it's a model is your boards actually meet, set priorities, and get things done, which you know is quite a feat. Through that work, Dane and his staff and the police jury, you decided to apply for a second grant, which is one of your dreams was to come up with a community assessment center, a multi-agency assessment center where a child and a parent didn't have to go to 5 different agencies and figure out what to do. They could go one place, get help, or be referred to the right place. That would include police, law enforcement. They can bring kids there, social services, child abuse, juvenile justice, all in one place. So I believe Dane recently took a couple of you police jury members to Colorado to see the program there, and I hear you had a wonderful visit. MacArthur funded that, and I can tell you they know their money is being so well used here. So in short order, you will have one of the first resource centers in the nation. The MacArthur Foundation only trusted you to do it because you have such a track record and success. And Dane and his staff will proudly tell you that the children in Calcasieu Parish are your children, and you want to raise them well, and you want to do right by them. And that is what he and his staff has a philosophy, and he wants to protect the citizens. And he does that quite well. So when this program is up and running, you will have, as Dane puts it, a one-stop shop where a child and a parent can come in and get help or be triaged to the appropriate state agency or local agency. And we're really waiting on this because we're very excited about it. These are just focus areas. I wrote these down so you could see some of the things the foundation is working in. The ones I highlighted are things that Dane and his staff are actually doing, which is really looking at early intervention. You know problems, whether it's heart condition or anything else. If you wait till it's too late, it costs a lot of money and it's not very effective, right, to do treatment at the deep end. So what he and his staff are doing are focusing on treatment and intervention on the front end, doing the right treatment. It may cost a little bit more sometimes, but it actually works, so you don't have this rotating door of kids coming back over and over. Why is this important? I'll just go through these quickly, and that's because the state is developing models based on what you're doing. Our state has a long way to go in juvenile justice, but they're using Calcasieu Parish and what you're doing as a template. I know that Dane has recently met with Lafayette to help them develop a good model. And finally, we just gave a grant to the Baton Rouge Area Foundation, which will be using your work and taking it on the road all over the state of Louisiana. So I'm really here to applaud you and thank you for your collaboration and stepping up to the plate, being not only a local and state model, but something that the MacArthur Foundation will eventually put on the road nationally. I'd like to highlight a few things that are coming out of here. One is juvenile detention standards. You may not know this, but the state of Louisiana, for the first time ever, passed a law that said our detention centers have to be licensed and have standards. We've never had that before. And Dane is leading the effort on that, and they'll be modeling what they're doing after your detention center because it's one of the best in Louisiana. Triage and assessing kids before they're arrested or go to court, effective planning boards, and then using data to actually make decisions versus gut reactions. You actually go on the information that you have and make informed decisions. So, you know, sometimes you're never a hero or an expert in your own area, so it takes someone like me to come here and tell you that you're being recognized, and I'm very proud to do that. I also wanted to recognize Miss Julie Calzone. She is here with me. We are both board members of the Governor's Advisory Board for Juvenile Justice in Louisiana, and that board very much recognizes your work and Dane's as well. So I applaud you, and if you have any questions, I'm very happy to answer them.
Thank you, Ms. Deborah. We do have some questions by the jury. Ms. Trimmy.
Can I call you Dr. Deborah?
I wish you would.
Okay. Thank you, Doc. I'd like for Dane to come up here with you and just say a few words, Dane, because I know how hard you've been working. I know that Calvin went with you, and I'm not sure who else. I mean, Claude. Size. But anyhow, Calvin, I'm sorry you missed the trip. But, yeah, you can go next time. But anyway, we appreciate the MacArthur Foundation, and I just wanted you to just give us a quick briefing, and I think we need a standing ovation for our juvenile system, our juvenile leaders, and for what Calcasieu Parish has done for the juveniles over, I would say, since about 1998.
The quick briefing is that we realized early on that we didn't know enough to be good at it. And so what you do when you realize that, you admit it, and then you seek help from the best. And whether it be the MacArthur Foundation, the Casey Foundation, who represent us well, and then again, you get the right people who actually do the work, and the numbers look good, and it's all about the data and saving taxpayers' dollars. You know, we always, in our office, data equals dollars. I mean, that's the bottom line. You have to prove what you're doing, it has to be effective, and it's not working. Shift those monies around where it does work. So the secret is getting the right assistance from people around the country who know what they're doing.
Dane, I'd like for us to give the juvenile system and Kevin a big hand.
Thank you all.
Thank you. Dr. Deborah, that was just one of the questions that I had for you. I noticed you're from the Baton Rouge area. Is there a particular team in Baton Rouge that you support?
Yes. From the day
Dana tell you about that.
I think from the day I was born, or maybe even before I was born, that would be the Tigers.
That's what I'm talking about. Go Tigers.
I'm a little worried this year, though. I've got to tell you. Hopefully, we'll do good.
Quarterback.
I'm always supporting them.
Thank you, Dr.
Anything
Deborah.
else?
Is there any other questions by the jury?
The judge.
Aren't they playing
Judge Hood, you.
Privilege of the floor. I didn't fill out a card, but I've been to many seminars that Dr. DePrada has given to the entire judiciary of the state. And if she's involved and the MacArthur Foundation is involved, Calcasieu Parish is indeed very fortunate.
Judge, we thank you for those comments. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Deborah. We look forward to seeing you again soon. Mr. Size, I'm sorry.
Yes, I also like to say, Ms. Deborah, that I appreciate the things that the MacArthur Foundation does for the kids also. And it's been an honor and a privilege representing the jury on this particular board. And it is really, I mean, my first time going and serving on it, I went and visited with Mr. Boland. And when I got a chance to see, because that was what I was looking at. I was not looking at a place that housed young people for doing things wrong. I was looking at a place that tried to correct and dig down and correct the problem. And I was so excited at the program that you all have that's set up to do that. And the prevention, it's all about prevention. And you guys do a great job of it, and I'm glad to be a part of it. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Size.
I would like to add that it's really the support of all of you, the police jury, that makes this work for Dane. Without that, he wouldn't be able to do that. And having your interest and knowledge, because you're right, we're raising these kids. And if we don't raise them right, shame on us. I'd also like to mention the General Wise. Actually, that's actually my father's birthday, and he turns 90 on the same day.
That's awesome.
He's passed away, but it was very meaningful to me. I guess I was meant here to be tonight. So.
Very good, Dr.
Thank you,
Deborah.
Dr.
Thank you for
Deborah.
coming, too. At this time, I would ask that you would let me pull item number 12 and 13 because we have some gentlemen here that need to be at another meeting at this time, and at this time, I would like for those gentlemen to come forth, please. Item number 12, consideration of adopting a resolution authorizing the issuance by Waterworks District Number 9 of Ward 4 of Calcasieu Parish, Louisiana, of not exceeding $7.1 million principal amount of water revenue bonds. Mr. J. Delafield, please state your name and address for the record.
Jay Delafield, Lake Charles, Louisiana. I'm bond counsel to Waterworks District Number 9 of Ward 4. They intend to produce an additional tank and pipage and things like that within the district. If you have any questions, I'll be happy to address them. This project has not yet gone to the bond commission. It will go to the bond commission next month.
Is there any?
I was just going to move.
Okay.
Second.
I have a motion by Mr. Hassan and a second by Ms. Trimmy. Is there any discussion? Any objection? Hearing none, item number 12 passes.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you so much, Mr.
I've got
J.
the next item.
Yes.
13.
Item number 13, consideration of adopting a resolution authorizing the issuance, sales, and delivery by the Calcasieu Parish Public Trust Authority not to exceed $3 million in its revenue bonds. I have a motion by Mr. Fordham and a second by Mr. Size. Go ahead, Mr. J.
This is your typical request for authorization by the Public Trust Authority that I've been here for 30 years asking you to do, and it's just one more financing that we've done. Sandy was the chairman of the Trust Authority for many years, and here we go again. If you have any questions, I'd be happy to address them.
Also, Judge Hood, did you have any comments on this item also? If you would, please, you can come to the mic at this time.
The newspaper reporter asked me what was my comment on this, and I said, "At last." That was my
Amen.
comment. We've been
Good.
working on this for 10 years, and as of last night, the Lake Charles City Council dedicated the Sears Automotive property for the construction of Lake Charles City Court, and we're just thrilled.
Awesome.
And thankfully, with financing from the Home Mortgage Trust Authority, we can make it a reality. No taxpayer money involved. Not a penny of taxpayer money. It'll come from court funds.
Thank you, Judge Hood.
And the Louisiana State Bond Commission approved it this morning.
Thank you, Mr. Delafield. We have a motion by Mr. Fordham and a second by Mr. Size. Is there any discussion? Any objection? Hearing none, item number 13 passes.
Thank you all very much.
Thank you, Mr. Delafield. This time we'll move back to item number 9. Receive report from staff regarding the I-10 bridge replacement and bridge lighting project. Parish Administrator, Mr. Beam.
Thank you, Mr. President. This actually is a two-part item. The jury requested an update on both of these. What I'm going to do is ask Tim Connor first to go ahead and address the bridge lighting issue and answer any questions you may have. And following that, Bobby Hennigan from DOTD is here to discuss the bridge replacement update. So I'll just hand it over to Tim this time.
Yeah, I'll be brief. If y'all recall, this is a joint project, the lighting of the bridge between the City of Lake Charles and Calcasieu Parish, which are each contributing $164,000 towards the project. The City of Westlake is contributing $30,000, and also the state is contributing some federal funds of $92,000 towards the project. The project will be let by the City of Lake Charles. We anticipate that the construction would start in January. It's about a 6-week project, so it should be complete in February. The city's going to maintain the lights, is what's in the agreement, and these will be LED lights that they'll be installing also. So if you have any questions.
Thank you, Tim. Is there any discussion by the jury? We do have discussion. Mr. McMillan.
Thank you, Tim. I put this on the agenda because we had some folks asking about when this may come to fruition, and to hear that it could be possibly finished by February is great news. I did receive another phone call and was asked, would we do a study on what it would cost to put lights on the 210 bridge? And I was speaking with Bobby earlier. I think you have the electrical hookups for the 210 bridge. Is there any way you could get out a request for proposal to see what lighting would cost us on the 210 bridge?
Sure, be glad to.
I'd ask this juror to agree with me on just getting that request for proposal. Do I need that in the form of a motion to do that, or can we just ask him as staff to do it?
Just follow up with it.
Follow up with staff. Yeah, check on 210, see what kind of money we'd be looking on that too.
Sure, I'd be glad to.
Thank you, Mr.
Hold on,
President.
Tim. We have a few more questions. Mr. Size.
Well, that was pretty much my question, because I got a call, and the call was a little bit different in that it stated that you know, if we getting ready to spend money for a bridge that we know that's going to be demolished, putting lights on that one, why are we not looking at putting lights on a bridge that we know is not going to be demolished? It's been there for 40 years, and also 15 years ago, a Chinese ship hit it. You know, so we, you know, all of the connection, like I said, is already there, and so the question was raised to me as to, you know, is there a joint effort toward us trying to look at doing that also?
Okay. Well, I'm glad to pursue that and get back with you.
Thank you.
We do have another speaker, Mr. Spell.
Mr. President, just for safe housekeeping, if it's okay, I'd like to make a motion that we instruct staff to go out for RFQs on the lighting issue for 210.
Go ahead, Mr. Bean.
I can just comment on that. I can ask Tim maybe. There may be a way to just get an estimate if you just sort of need an idea of that when you get into requests for proposals. I don't know if you have to go that far just to get a sense. If I hear you, Mr. McMillan, it's really to get an idea of what kind of costs we're talking about at this time. We can always revisit it. That wouldn't require as detailed an action. Tim, is that?
And Mr.
Yeah, I
Chairman,
would
clear
agree.
that up. If I could just get
More of an
you
estimate.
know, a lot of times we just get 3 quotes on something. So maybe if we could go out for some quotes instead of a true request for proposal to do the project, but getting those quotes and maybe getting 2 or 3 of them, so we could get a range from some different lighting companies, engineering companies, whoever might would do this, to see what would it be in. So I'd ask for quotes. Is it basically would just be
Sure.
And that staff can certainly do that for us. Thank you.
Well, if you want to do that, I would suggest you go ahead and just maybe amend the motion to if you want to get quotes on that. We would need something if you want to go that far.
Is it,
Go ahead, Mr. Spell. You have the floor.
is it possible just to get an engineer's estimate on it?
Sure.
Do we need to go out and get a contractor to spend a lot of time? I mean, we
Yeah,
can
we'll
do
follow up. We'll get
engineer's
you a cost and
estimates.
get something back to you. So give you an idea of what the cost would be, and then we can go from there.
I would amend my motion, Mr. President, that we request staff to prepare an engineer's estimate on that project and report back to the
Second.
jury.
Thank you, Mr. Spell. I have a motion and a second on that. Before you go, Mr. Tim, we have a few more speakers on this item.
Sure.
Okay, can we get a motion on this item? We have a motion and a second. Any discussion?
We got to vote on his first.
Okay. Is there, we have a motion on Mr. Spell's. We had a second by Ms. Trimmy. Is there any discussion? Any objection? Hearing none. Item so moved. Mr. Connor, please remain there. We have a speaker on this item with Mr. Ray Miller. Please come forth.
My name is Ray Miller. I live at 2609 Astor Street in Lake Charles. I'm a state licensed residential building contractor. And y'all took a little bit of air out of my balloon. I'm making a motion, but you know, that's just the beginning. And I just want to bring to everybody's attention that there's several lighting problems in our area. And since we have a DOTD representative here, it might be a good time. But it's also, what I have to say, and I've got it written down, is to maybe help plant it in your minds that there is a need out here. And so when these prices come back, that maybe you'll have additional justification. Maybe you have it already in your mind and you know some of these are justified. Maybe you don't. But I just want to bring some things to your attention. I recently saw wonderful highway lights, 75 to 100 feet tall, going up on I-10 in rural areas, 50 miles east of Lake Charles. Lights help prevent accidents, which help keep our insurance rates from rising, help avoid loss of property. They help save lives and reduce crippling injuries and help reduce it. They also help increase the community's beauty and make us more attractive to outsiders. Highway lights help make our community a better place to live. We've already talked a little bit about the I-210 bridge, but I'm going to go ahead and read what I have. The I-210 bridge is one area that needs lights. Nearly every large bridge in America has lights on it, except the I-210 bridge. Our bridge is long, high, has a curve, and is in a fog-prone area. A couple of thousands of our citizens travel across that bridge daily, going to and from work. Many of them work shift work and travel during the hours of darkness. Thousands of visitors to La Berge Casino from Texas travel across that bridge during hours of darkness while going to and from the casino. It seems like it would be easy for us to find a way to justify lights for this bridge. I-210 from exit 23, that's called the Indigent Sulphur exit, going east to the I-10 bridge is another area that needs lights badly. The area from exit 23 east to the I-210 bridge is heavily scarred from many accidents. Many railings are missing on the overpasses. The median shrubs are heavily torn up and missing from accidents. Trees and ditches along the interstate have scars and small crosses showing where accidents took place and people killed. This is probably the most heavily traveled piece of interstate highway in our parish, and where it looks like the most accidents have happened. My question is, does anybody at DOTD realize how many accidents happen on that stretch of I-10 where our plant workers, 18-wheelers with plant products, cross-country travelers, and cross-country 18-wheelers all converge? And do they realize we have no lights? We've got dark forests, we've got a bayou bridge, we have a curve, and we've got fog to deal with in this 2-mile stretch. It doesn't seem like they would know that they know this, or else something would have been done years ago. Maybe they don't get these reports from the public safety people about how many accidents happen. I don't know what they work with. I-210 within Lake Charles is another area that needs lights. Nearly every interstate highway in America within a city limits has lights, except I-210. What can be done to fix this? Several thousands of our citizens use I-210 to go to and from work at the plants and casinos, and they work shift work and travel at night. 18-wheelers cross-country traffic is increasing on the I-210, and it's becoming more dangerous. Can the DOTD do anything to fix this 40-year-old problem and bring us up to the U.S. standard of lighting? I'll bring this to the Polish Bureau's attention, like I said, so that maybe some of these issues will be planted in your minds, and then you could be and it could influence your vote in the future. And some of these problems are city problems. Some of them are state problems. Some of them are parish problems. There's all kind of different problems. But the common thread in all of it is the DOTD. Elected people come and go, but the DOTD, they tend to stay there for 20 or 30 years. And I look to them as to be the nucleus or the glue that binds all this together. Sometimes maybe a mayor doesn't want lights because he doesn't want to pay the light bill. But what's best for the people? Maybe that mayor doesn't drive across the bridge. Maybe he isn't aware. There's a lot of different governments involved in this, parish, city, and state. And I don't know how to get it solved, so I just bring it to your attention as another elected body. Maybe you can do something about it. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Miller. We have a few jurors that have comment on that. Mr. Landry.
Oh, you called on me? Oh, I'm sorry. Did I want to speak?
Yeah,
Okay.
I had you on my list to speak, Mr.
You must have overlooked it earlier. I almost forgot. Thank you. I was going to tell Tim, whenever you do your pricing, you may want to spend about 15% of the time getting the price and 85% of the time figuring out how we're going to pay for it. I wouldn't go to a whole lot of, hopefully that's what, I'm sure you can call. You know people in the business. You can call and get the price. So spend most of the time coming back telling us how we're going to pay for it.
Thank you, Mr. Landry. Tim, stay right there. My next speaker is Mr. Wilburn Malbro. Please come to the mic. State your name and address for the record, please.
Good evening, folks. My name is Minister Wilbert Marlboro, Jr., and I reside at 502 North Prater Street in Lake Charles, Louisiana. My reason for being here this evening, gentlemen, I don't know if I'm in the correct form or whatever the case is, but I saw on the agenda where you had a replacement involved with the 110 bridge. And good evening. Again, I'm a citizen of this grand city, and I want to propose that we revisit the situation about the height of the new 110 bridge. To keep the bridge at the proposed height would greatly diminish any chance of development in North Lake Charles. And I realize that there are pros and cons about it, but somewhere there's a compromise. That will be acceptable to all. Myself being a minister and a man of God, I cannot resist the opportunity to inject a little scripture. In the book of Matthew, the 12th chapter, some confusion occurred about Jesus healing a demon-possessed, blind, and mute man. And in the 25th verse, he said, "But Jesus knew their thoughts and said to them, Every kingdom divided against each other will come to desolation, and every city or house divided against itself will not stand. Let us try to work toward together to try to build a bridge that will service the entire parish." And we have a natural waterway back there that didn't even need to be dredged. And in a joke and a statement, a friend told me that the Titanic could float back there if it was existed. So then with this type of access to waterways, why not use it while we have it available? Because as most of you are aware, we just had a development board approved by the legislature to organize efforts in that area. And like I said, my proposal, hopefully, we can get this bridge where it's usable for everybody. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Harrow. At this time, I have one of the jurors that would like to comment. Mr. Size.
I don't have any comments.
Okay. Is there any other comments by the jury?
Yeah,
All right, Mr. McMillan.
And Mr. Malvo, absolutely respect the North Lake Charles area, their development, but I can tell you it's been a very long haul in talking about the height of the I-10 bridge, and to finally come to a 4-to-1 conclusion by the different entities that vote on that to build a 73-foot bridge was very, very important in expediting this bridge and getting it built. If we go back and we start rethinking this thought process that's already been kind of washed out, ironed out, talked out, everything that we could do on behalf of this jury, we're going to stymie this project. I visited with Mr. Hennigan, who had been up here, be up here in a little bit, but I think he would echo my thoughts that if we don't move forward as quickly as we can with the environmental studies, and if we start rehashing the height of this bridge, it's going to make us lose this project. And I'm going to tell you, in this bridge project is also the overpass for the city of Westlake that's in my district, and I'm frustrated about waiting on trains, as frustrated as you may be in wanting a higher bridge for North Lake Charles. But I think at 73 foot, we can have economic development in North Lake Charles. I'm very positive about that. We've already hashed out the friendship stuff, but it's very important that we don't hinge back and go back to recant something that we've already voted on. We need to keep moving forward, and we need all our parties together. Because I'm telling you, this is the way I truly believe. Washington is waiting for any excuse to not fund a project. And if they see controversy in a community that's not united to build an I-10 bridge, then we'll have problems. We do not need to rehash this. We need to go with the 73-foot bridge and move forward as quickly as we can. But I respect your opinion, and thank you for being here.
Mr. McMillan, President, may I say something? Mr. McMillan, this is not just an opinion of myself. You know, it's several other entities involved here, and you mentioned friendship. And in our discussions of the matter, and I'm not here to make any threats or nothing like that, but an opportunity was proposed for us to entertain counsel to get this matter handled properly before Washington even acts upon it. But you're entitled to your opinion, Mr. McMillan, and so am I. Thank you.
And Mr. Malvo, I do respect your opinion. I'm not in any way not respect your opinion, but I can tell you this has been hashed out, and we do not need to recant. We need to stay with the 73-foot bridge, and we need to go forward in unity. Thank you, Mr. President.
Thank you, Mr. McMillan. We do have discussion. Ms. Griffin.
I just have a question. I don't know who could answer this. What year did we entertain this and go through all of the discussion and debate and with all of the different entities that's involved?
Ms.
Yes.
Griffin, I don't remember the exact date, but Mr. McMillan is right. That issue had been voted on by this body to go with that height. That issue has really been resolved in that sense. I would request that you allow Mr. Hennigan to go ahead and give his report and give you a better idea of where they are in the process. And I think at that point, whatever questions you have would be appropriate. But I can tell you the height issue, which he may address, it has been decided on. I just don't know the date off the top of my head. It's been a while back.
It's been a while back, and there was some very strenuous debates and talks, and we went over and over and over with the city of Lake Charles and with Westlake and the state of Louisiana, and then we also had to deal with the cost also. So I just wanted to get those dates because I know it had been some time ago. Thank you for that information. And I just, Mr. President, please, Mr. Malvo's issue and his concern was one of the concerns that we really worked with. I did. And I don't know what Ross, who represents some of North Lake Charles, that was a very tough decision and something that we really worked hard at trying to compromise to get. And the record will indicate that we were in support of having the bridge tall enough to promote economic development from the river in the back. But
it wasn't a unanimous vote either.
And it was not a unanimous vote. And I had called and asked to get information from that incident. Unfortunately, it wasn't. No one got it, but I did request it. But it happened so long ago, and it caused some unrest up here. Nevertheless, it's that's in the past. It's over with, and I'm one vote up here, and I got 14 members, and seriously, I don't think it will be entertained again. Thank you, sir.
Thank you, Ms. Griffin. At this time, we want to receive a report from Mr. Bobby Hennigan with DOTD, please. Please come forward, state your name and address for the record, Mr. Hennigan.
Bobby Hennigan. I live at 188 Valerie Road in DeRidder. I appreciate the opportunity to come and visit with you this afternoon. Brian asked me if I would to come and just give you an update on where we are in the process for the new I-10 bridge over the Calcasieu River. I'd like to preface it before I get into the I-10 bridge. I'd like just to go over the process and the different steps that DOTD has to go through when they create and develop a project. And I'm doing that so when we start talking about the bridge, you'll know where we are in the process, what steps we've already completed, where we are, and where we need to go. The first step when we do any project, we do a feasibility study, and that's basically what it says. We look at the problem that's been defined, and we look at the proposed solutions to see if these proposed solutions are feasible. What problems are we going to have? Will the solution the proposed solution solve our problem? How much will it cost? Is there money available? Is it feasible to do the project? And then once we get past that, then we go to the environmental process. If you accept federal funds on any project, you've got to go through the NEPA process. That's an environmental process. You've got to produce an environmental document that tells you what the environmental issues are and how you're going to mitigate those issues. It can be a very simple process. If there's no environmental issues, you can do what you call an environmental assessment. Basically, you say that we're going to stay within the right-of-way, there's no environmental issues, and we're going forward. Or it can be as complicated and complex as an environmental impact statement, where you may have a chemical spill and you have to address that. So the feasibility study, and then you've got to produce the environmental document that you present to the Federal Highway Administration, and they have to approve it for you to receive federal funds. The next step after those two studies, you've got to find funding. You've got to have a funding source in place. You've got to have your cost estimates, and you've got to know that you can pay for the job before you go forward with any other steps. Once you have your funding in place, then you go to the design process. You get the engineers to prepare the drawings, the plans, the specifications. You design the project. After that, you go through the letting process. You prepare all your contract documents, your proposals. You let the project. You receive bids from the contractors. After that, you have a contractor. Then you go through the construction phase. And finally, after it's constructed, you go through the maintenance phase. So DOTD has 7 phases, and I'm sure the police jury has the same phases. They may term it differently. But these are the steps that DOTD has to go through to create and to construct a project. So let's get to the I-10 bridge. Where are we? Well, the first thing I want to say is the bridge is safe. We always have issues, is the bridge safe? We inspect it at least annually. But we do have a repair project that will be coming up as soon as the lighting project is finished in January. We've got a repair project. There's a few rust issues. We'll be painting. We'll be replacing some of the pins. Just some good maintenance work that the bridge needs. It's almost 60 years old, so we need to do some maintenance work, so that will be coming. But where are we on the new bridge? Well, several years ago, we completed all the feasibility studies. We looked at all the traffic issues, the marine issues, everything else involved. So we've completed the feasibility studies. So we go to the environmental issues right now. Let me comment about that. Everybody's aware that ConocoPhillips has had an EDC spill out there, chemical spill. It's a hazardous material. So I'm going to read the notes I have to make sure I get all the details right and get it in order, and certainly we'll take questions if you have that. ConocoPhillips, DEQ, and DOTD have agreed to the placement of additional recovery and monitor wells associated with this ED spill on DOTD rights-of-way. DOTD has an agreement with ConocoPhillips that the placement of these wells will not interfere with the future construction of the project. And then ConocoPhillips has agreed to install permanent monitoring wells north of the existing I-10, and these wells will show the movement of the EDC contamination, and these wells should be installed this month. So ConocoPhillips is out there. They've got the monitoring wells in place. They're putting other wells to see how the spill is migrating, to see where it is, and to see how it's going to affect our construction project. So ConocoPhillips is working with us in that. DOTD has initiated work to restart the NEPA process. At one time, we were proceeding with the environmental process, but it was suspended when we found out that there was a chemical spill. So at that time, we shut things down. But right now, DOTD is starting that process up again. We have hired an engineering consultant. We've directed the consultant to look at alternative bridge designs that will comply with the DEQ construction guidelines. DEQ has told us that we're limited in where we can put piles. We're limited in how deep we can put piles. So we've got some limitations that have been placed on us by DEQ. So our environmental consultant will take that into consideration when he's looking at different designs that we may can implement that will comply with these limitations. We directed our consultant to evaluate environmental consequences for the bridge project and include these alternate designs. And last, we've directed our consultant to develop environmental testing and modeling designs to ensure protection of the environment and the Chico Aquifer before, during, and after the construction. So we've got a consultant in place. He's going through the environmental process. It's going to be an environmental impact statement. It's not the simple environmental document. It's going to be very complex, and it could take up to 2 years to complete. So that's where we are right now. We're starting the environmental process. If you think back just a few minutes, I told you after the environmental process, we need funding. The estimate right now is $400 million. There's no source of funding. It's my recommendation that we begin that discussion, that the local leaders, our state delegation, our congressional delegation, DOTD, Federal Highway Administration, we begin that discussion. How are we going to pay for this project? So that's where we are right now, and I'm open for questions.
Okay, Ms. Sinekin, we do have discussion. Ms. Trimmy.
Bobby,
Yes, ma'am.
how many years you have left to retire?
I've got about 4 months.
You going then?
Yes.
Okay. So do you know who's going to take your job?
No, ma'am, I don't.
You don't have any idea?
No, ma'am, I don't know who will apply. We haven't started that process.
So we'll be starting from scratch with our Bain DOT man and the person that we've been working with for. Can you go back and figure out how many directors at DOT here in Lake Charles? When did this start back? Did this start back with Rob McCorkadale? Did this start back with, I worked there. I was the secretary. Y'all didn't know that, for DOTD. And they have a wonderful staff. Do you know how many years we've been talking about this?
I've been in this position for 10 years, and it predates my time.
I thought so. And actually, I started there in 1965, so at DOTD. So that's people ask me, how do you know so much about roads? I said, well, I learned the hard way with complaints. But the good news is that we have a plan. The bad news is we have zero funds. So you've been there for over 10 years, and I would think it was at least 10 years before that we started talking about this. So we're at 20 years now. And if God lets me live in 20 years, I'll make it to 85. I just made it to 65 on August 11th. So I hope before all of us here, are able to make it as long to see that bridge completed. And I just pray God, I'm glad you told me that it's safe, because one of the things that really concerns me, and y'all are spending like $11 million on this redo?
I don't think it's going to be that much. I think it's in the $5 million range.
Okay, $5 million. Well, we could have used that on down payment. We've got to keep it up, because one of the things that scares me is what happened in Minnesota. And there's like 60,000 vehicles or so. I don't know exactly how many. You do probably. That pass over east and west over I-10. And some precious people, precious family, and precious cargo go over that bridge every day. So congratulations on your retirement, Bobby. And looking forward to work with whoever comes after you. I know they'll do a good job, but we've enjoyed you, and we appreciate our new lights, our red lights in DeQuincy. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Ms.
Thank
Trimmy.
you, Mr. President.
Mr. Andrew Pont.
Thank you, Mr. President. I, too, like Ms. Trimmy, wanted to thank you for saying that the bridge is safe. There's been a lot of discussion about the bridge not being safe, and I've always contended that the bridge was safe as the people who use it make it unsafe.
Mm-hmm.
Now, probably not germane to what we're talking about right here, but several years ago, I had Ronnie Johns, who was serving as state representative, to put signs on the bridge, trucks stay on the right lane. They're there, but nobody's enforcing them.
Mm.
There's not anybody that comes over that bridge, and I'm over that bridge all the time because I live on the west side of the river. Nobody goes 50 miles an hour on that bridge, and that is the speed limit. And I think if that was enforced, you'd see a lot less accidents on I-10 by the bridge, and it's such an inconvenience once and it happens all the time. Probably 3 times out of 5 I come here, I'm stalled in the traffic because somebody was not complying with the speed limits. And so I don't know what we do about that. That is not your responsibility. But the thing I want to visit with you is that you have answered the point that I've always made, that the bridge is safe. It's the people who use it make it unsafe. And I want to thank you for that.
Thank you, Mr. Francis. Mr. Spell.
Thank you, Mr. President. Bobby, I appreciate you being here, and I do have a few questions. Please don't take it that I'm shooting a messenger. But basically, just to kind of start off, we have about 8 major bridges over the I-10 corridor in Louisiana. Sabine River Bridge, Lake Charles I-10 Bridge, Industrial Canal Bridge, Twin Spans, Horace Wilkinson over the Mississippi River, Pearl River, Bonnet Care, and the Atchafalaya. Out of all those bridges, the Lake Charles Bridge is the oldest at being built in 1952. The next oldest bridge was over the Sabine River, and it was replaced in 2003. So this brings me to my questions. You had mentioned the NEPA process on the environmental. You said it'd probably take about 2 years. Why is it going to take 2 years?
Again, we've got to do a full environmental impact statement. I'm not sure what all that entails, but I know that's the most complex environmental document you can have. You've got to look at the spill. You've got to look at how's it going to affect the public. Can we clean it up? How are we going to construct the bridge with the spill still in place? Is the spill being cleaned up? Then you've got all your other environmental issues too. You've got to look at marine traffic. You've got to look at wetlands, environmental endangered species. Are you going through parks? Are you going through cemeteries? You've got to look at all these issues that's required by the federal government, and you've got to mitigate those. But again, I think the big issues that we've got to face, the marine issues, of course, and a chemical spill. And then you've got to look at how can you construct the project with these issues in place.
Is there any way to expedite that process?
not that I know of. Again, I'm not that familiar with all the requirements of an environmental impact statement, but I've been told it can take 2 years.
Okay. If we could maybe jump over to the funding side of it. The bridge was built in 1952. I mean, it's 58 years old. I guess my question is the age of the bridge compared to all the other bridges along the corridor, the I-10 corridor in the state. And Mr. Danahay might want to address this, but I would imagine that if our state delegation, the governor of this great state, all the local bodies in Calcasieu Parish got together and squeaky wheel gets the grease, cried bloody murder for the federal government to put a priority on this project and help us locate funding, I would imagine that that squeaky wheel might get greased. So my question is, you know, funding's not located? Well, in my opinion, that's inexcusable on a 58-year-old bridge on a major corridor that is contributing a great deal to the economy of this country. And the federal government, they ought to be working harder than we are on securing funding for this project. So my question is at a state level, combined with our federal delegation and local delegation, is there a way that we can approach the federal government and say, hey, look, we need funding for this, and we shouldn't have to wait around forever to find it. So we can be ready whenever the environmental is done. You know, you had mentioned that funding is located once the design process is finished. Well, I mean, you can do preliminary engineering, you can do preliminary design, you can do engineering estimates, and I would think that you could at least base some funding on that to at least get us off the ground with an initial phase for the project. So bottom line question is there an effort like that in place that involves the governor, state delegation, and local government officials?
Ultimately, it's a state project. Now, most of the work we do has federal funds in it. Because I don't really know how to answer you. The state doesn't have that type of funding available in its construction budget, in its normal annual construction budget. To me, there's got to be some special source of funding. And I don't have the answer to that. There's a lot of ideas that have been put on the table. But that's where I think we need to start that discussion between our local officials, our state officials, and our congressional officials, and DOTD. We need to see what funding sources may be available. Is there an innovative way to gather money and pay for it? Can it be a congressional earmark? Can it be tolls? Can it be who knows what else? But I think all of these ideas need to be on the table, and we need to hash through that, and we need to come up with a plan.
Well, and I guess that's kind of where I'm going, is I'm agreeing with you. That effort needs to be in place. I've seen a lot of articles, federal government dishing out $400 million here, $400 million there. They got the money. They can pay for a substantial part of this project, but we need a squeaky wheel. And we all have to, as Mr. McMillan stated, we have to be united, and we have to be a squeaky wheel together. And I guess that brings me to my final question, Mr. Hennigan, is does this bridge currently meet Federal Highway Administration standards?
We inspect the bridge annually. It's safe. This bridge predates the interstate system. It was part of Highway 90. We all know that. When the interstate came in, the interstate took over the bridge. My guess is it does not meet current standards as far as slopes, as far as shoulders, different issues like that. But if your question is it safe? Yes, it's safe.
No, and I have confidence y'all are maintaining your maintenance. My question is this bridge was built and designed in a different era, and now bridges are being built and designed a different way, and this bridge does not meet those current standards.
That's correct.
Okay. Thank you, Mr. President.
Thank you, Mr. Spell. Ms. Griffin.
Thank you, Mr. President. Bobby, thanks for coming up and giving us your report. And I was so glad when you made mention that that project will be a state project.
Yes.
And in reference to federal government getting help and the funds needed for that, that is why we have our congressional delegation. The process to get this rolling is, you know, our delegation usually get all of the input and the needs that we have. We send it to them, and then they carry the ball, start working with it. But that's going to have to be a level of cooperation from everybody. Not one governmental agencies can be responsible for this. Now, Mr. President, may I address Mr. Sides?
Yes.
Mr. Sides, that was a very good question that your constituents ask you about the lightning on that bridge and why spend money. It's going to be years and years and years before that bridge is built, and with the request we're asking for, $400 million is a lot of money. So you could tell them we need the lighting because we don't know when we're going to get the bridge, and we need to try to protect our lives around here. Now, in reference to getting that money, by it being such a large amount of money, it's going to be another 15 to 20 years, I suspect, because we've been dealing with that for at least 15 years. That type of money don't come overnight. And so I just want to let everybody aware of it. We're talking about building a bridge. That bridge is not coming tomorrow. Thank you so much, sir. Thank you.
Ms. Griffin. Mr. McMillan.
Thank you, Mr. President. And Mr. Spell, I absolutely agree with you. Squeaky wheels get old. We have been squeaking for quite a while. I know our congressional delegation is well informed on the I-10 bridge and I-10 projects. Bobby and I have worked on a number of different projects to keep this on the front burner as much as we can, as well as this jury on the front burner. First off, I'd like to, and we're mentioning I-10 bridge, in conjunction, Bobby, and please also let the folks know when we talk I-10 bridge, we're talking I-10 bridge, Westlake overpass. Yes. We've gotten that to a point. We had separate projects or thought about separate projects at times, but when we mention one, we're mentioning both. That's
correct.
It's $400 million for I-10 bridge and the Westlake overpass. So I want to make sure that's a clarification. I'll yield to you, Ms. Griffin. Just a second. I got some more, Mr.
Okay. Oh, you're ready for me now?
Yes, ma'am.
Well, I mean, I thought it was understood we were talking about both of them because it's coming in a package, right? Yes. And that is why, I mean, I just can't understand why anyone didn't know that. But thank you for reminding them.
Yes, ma'am. I want to reiterate that because sometimes it gets washed under. We've been saying bridge all night, and I want to make sure that the citizens of Westlake know that me and Ms. Griffin are fighting for that overpass from this jury standpoint. Your new secretary, Sherry LaBasse, has been in this area, and I know the I-49 project was a major project for Louisiana. From what I heard came out of that meeting, she has now realized that this I-10 project and the I-10 bridge has a very high ranking, if not number one. I'd like for you to comment on that.
That's what I've heard her say, that this is high priority in the state. We've had other major projects that have been constructed, and this one gradually moves up. This is one of the top projects in priority for DOTD.
And where Secretary Anker may not have felt somewhat that way in some of the discussions I've had with him, to have a secretary from the state saying the I-10 bridge is now the number one project in the state, that's good news. That's really good news, and we want to keep her feet to the fire on that, Mr. Spell. I agree with you on 100%. We did have discussion earlier about the height of the bridge. I would like for your comments as a superintendent of this district, as DOT, how would that affect us if we started rehashing the height of the I-10 bridge?
Right now, we're proceeding with the 73-foot vertical clearance. That was a recommendation that DOTD had put forth several years ago. After a lot of debate, the local MPO, the Metropolitan Planning Organization, voted to support that recommendation. So that's the way we're proceeding right now. You asked how it would affect us if we had to go back. I think it would be a tremendous delay at best if we go back and have that debate and stop the process again.
So more delay, more time waiting, and it could possibly even push us back for a number of years, is what you're saying, if we start to recant on the height of the bridge. I'm not trying to put words in your mouth. I just want to make sure I'm hearing it specifically from you on that behalf.
I think that's correct, yes.
Okay. I-10 bridge and overpass. We got to keep clicking that, and we need the 400 million. I'll work in every way they can. Isn't there some money set aside, a couple of million already, that had been set aside by this jury, as well as maybe the city of Westlake came about for some of the engineering studies? So there's some seed money already, isn't there?
Yeah, I think there's some money, they can pay for the studies and the minor things, but certainly not to begin construction.
And I would ask the same thing. This environmental study is not going to be hung up waiting on funding. Do we have the funding to do the environmental study?
That's correct.
Okay, great. Thank you, Mr. President.
Thank you, Mr. McMillan. Dr. Mackey.
I want to point out this I-10 goes from California to Florida. It has the least amount of traffic stopping because of weather. So it's one of the most traveled and the most important ways to go from California to Florida. It has probably the biggest load as far as manufacturing goods coming on it. And so it affects us, yes, but it affects the whole country because this road is open almost 100% of the time. And we should all be looking at it as the most strategic east-west road from California to Florida. So it's more than just right here, but that's how much more important it is to get this thing done. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Mackey. Mr. Landry.
I'm good, thank you.
All right. Mr. Size?
Yes, thank you, Mr. President. The only question I have, I was going over when you said the list of things that have to be in place before, we can have this bridge. And I hear we talking about the height and the design, but item 3 was funding.
Yes, sir.
Right? So we don't have the funding, right?
That's correct.
So item 4 was the design, right?
Yes.
So then why are we talking about how this height is going to hold us back if we got to have 3 before we can have 4, right? And 4 is funding. So that's not really correct in saying that we're going to really hold ourselves back on the height and stuff because item 3 is funding. And funding has to take place before item 4 takes place, correct?
Yes.
Okay. Thank you, sir.
Thank you, Mr. Size. Mr. Marable, I'll give you a few minutes, sir, just to have a comment on that.
Mr. Hennigan, before you leave, I'd like for you to answer this question for me, sir. At 73 feet, the way the bridge is proposed now, the pilings only go a certain length deep. Is that correct?
The depth of the pilings has not been designed yet.
Okay, but naturally, in order to go 89 feet instead of 73 feet, then the pilings will have to be deeper, won't they?
Mr. Hennigan, could you come to the mic so that we all could hear you?
I'm sorry. I apologize.
That's okay. Thank you.
Again, there are a lot of design parameters. I'm not a bridge design engineer. There are different ways of designing the footings, so that may or may not be correct.
Okay, Mr. Hennigan. Well, what about this question? How much effect does the depth of the pilings for the bridge have upon the environmental study? I mean, won't it be a bigger environmental study if they were deeper than if they was left not quite the depth to get to for 73 feet?
Again, you're asking questions I can't give you the details on. You could put a bigger spread footing. You could put deeper pile. Again, we have limitations that have been imposed on us by DEQ and where the spill is, how much is it migrating? If we did certain things, would it get into the aquifer? A lot of different parameters that just haven't been designed yet.
Okay, so then the depth, more or less, of these pilings would have a direct effect on the environmental study. Is that not correct?
The location, the depth, and the migration of the chemical spill would have a big. The depth of the piling, the placement of the piling would be, all of that would have to be considered to design the project.
Okay. All right. We can let it
Thank you,
go.
Mr. Marable.
Thank you.
We appreciate it. Thank you, Mr. Bobby Hennigan, for coming today also.
Thank you.
Is there any other questions by the jury? Can I get a motion to receive report?
So moved.
I have a motion by Mr. Collins and a second by Mr. Spill. Is there any discussion? Any objection? Hearing none, item number 9 passes. Item number 10, consideration of approving the minutes of the regular meeting of the police jury dated July 1st, 2010. I have a motion by Mr. Scott and a second by Mr. Spell. Is there any discussion? Any objection? Hearing none, item number 10 passes. Item number 11, consideration of approving the budget committee report dated August 19th, 2010. Mr. McMillan.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'd like to give a committee report on the Budget Committee that met at 5 o'clock today. We had 3 items on the agenda. They were all voted unanimously to pass. Item 3.1, Ward 1, Fire Protection District Number 1 for $6,500 for purchase of 4 radios, handheld radios. 3.2, Ward 4, Waterworks District Number 4, Ward 4, $120,000 for the purpose of upgrading the existing water mains, Mims Road, Miller Avenue to Johnson Street. And item 3.3, Ward 7, and that money there is coming out of the Ward 4 large gaming fund. Item 3.3, Ward 7, Ward 4, Ward 7 Fire Protection District Number 1, $12,800 in matching funds for the purchase of 2 thermal imaging cameras. I make a motion that all these be approved.
Second.
I have a motion by Mr. McMillan and a second by Mr. Scott. Is there any discussion? Any objection? Hearing none, item number 11 passes. We've already taken up item number 12 and 13. We'll now proceed on to item number 14.
Move to adopt.
Consideration of adopting a resolution indicating no objection to the following proposed projects in Calcasieu Parish, Louisiana, provided said works meet with the rules and regulations of the Corps of Engineers, best management practices during the course of construction set forth by the Environmental Protection Agency guidelines. I have a motion by Mr. Spell and a second by Mr. Stelly. Is there any discussion? Any objection? Hearing none, item number 14 passes. Item number 15, consideration of adopting a resolution accepting La Riviera subdivision located off Mims Road in Ward 4. I have a motion by Ms. Griffin and a second by Mr. McMillan. Is there any discussion? Any objection? Hearing none, item number 15 passes. Item number 16, consideration of adopting a resolution approving the parish participation in federal off-systems bridge rehabilitation and replacement programs agreement with Louisiana Department of Transportation and Development, which provides for replacement of various off-system bridges in accordance with the parish approved priority list. I have a motion by Mr. Size and a second by Ms. Griffin. Is there any discussion? Any objection? Hearing none, item number 16 passes. Item number 17, consideration of adopting a resolution approving the continued agreement with the Calcasieu Parish School Board to provide for attendance, taking, monitoring, and related services to the Truancy Assessment and Service Center, with associated costs to be paid through the funding from the Louisiana State University Office of Social Service Research and Development. I have a motion by Ms. Griffin and a second by Mr. Size. I have discussion. Ms. Griffin.
Is Dane still here? Thank you, Mr. President. Did we receive this from you, Dane?
Yes, ma'am.
This is some good information, and I'm wondering, are the parents aware of the truancy program and the requirements?
We're making them aware, just to kind of tell you how we're doing that. Every morning throughout the parish, there's 36 elementary schools. Our staff gets there at 7 o'clock in the loop. As parents drop their kids off, we give them a bottle of water. It's this task on it and the truancy brochure. And the staff that will be at all the elementary schools is right here. So I think tomorrow morning they're at Nelson. Okay. We were at College Oaks today. So yes, ma'am.
This is so good, and parents need to be aware, and sometimes some of them need to take more responsibility to make sure those kids in school. And I'm particularly concerned about the tardiness, too. But now it's mandated that they could only have so many tardies, absenteeism for the year. So this is good, and I appreciate that. Thank you so much.
Yes, ma'am. Thank you, Ms. Griffin. Mr. Bean.
Thank you, Mr. President. At the risk of giving Dane a big head, I have to brag a little bit on your Office of Juvenile Justice Services again. Following Dr. DePreto, it's kind of hard to top that. She obviously mentioned that Police Jury's Office of Juvenile Justice is not a model just for this state, but for the entire nation. To translate that into dollars, I think it's important for you to know something about this item. The Truancy Assistance Assessment Center funding at the state, some of you know this already, but it was cut completely in this last legislative session, the state's portion. It's some federal, some state money. At the legislature, at the last part of the session, reinstated, at least for the current year, some of the funds, but they couldn't do it for all of them. And several of these centers were either completely shut down or cut back, including some large ones. I think, Dane, if I'm not mistaken, in Lafayette, New Orleans, and places like that. Calcasieu's kept the money, and it kept it because it was data-driven results. this office and the staff they have there, which is very good, was able to show what they're doing with these kids and the performance, and that's what it takes to get these dollars. So state dollars are coming here because of the work that they've done, and it's a part of that overall reason that foundations are looking at this area. But I didn't want to go by without knowing that a lot of that money would be doing those things Ms. Griffin pointed out because it looked like we were going to lose it. And that's the most anxious I think I've ever seen Dane since I've known him in the last 10 years. But he and his staff, and I got to give credit to all the agencies that work with us on that, the DA, the judges, and others, and the local delegation too, and of course your leadership. So I think that's important to point out.
Thank you, Mr. Beam. Mr. Dane, you've been up here 3 times tonight. Do you want to go ahead and take tomorrow off?
It's up to boss man right here. So.
Now we have
doing a great job, Dane. Keep up the good work, Dane. We have a motion and a second. Is there any discussion? Any objection? Hearing none. Item number 17 passes. Item number 18, consideration of adopting a resolution approving the submittal of a sub-grant by the Office of Community Service for the tentative allocation of $450,906 to the Louisiana Workforce Commission Community Service Block Grant to be utilized from October 1st, 2011 to September 30th, 2012 to provide services for programs in accordance with the provisions of the Community Service Block Grant Act of 1981 and amendments. I have a motion by Ms. Griffin and a second by Mr. Collins. Is there any discussion? Any objection? Hearing none, item number 18 passes. Item number 19, take appropriate action on bids received by the Parish Purchasing Agent on August 12th, 2012 for signed blanks with unit price effective from September 1st, 2010 until February 28th, 2011. I have a motion by Mr. Scott and a second by Mr. Stelly. Is there any discussion? Any objection? Hearing none, item number 19 passes. Item number 20, take appropriate actions on bids received by the Parish Purchasing Agent on August 18th, 2010 for Calcasieu project. Excuse me, Ms. Trimmy.
I move.
Motion by Mr.
Let me go back to 20. Take appropriate actions on bids received by the Parish Purchasing Agent on August 18th, 2010 for Calcasieu project number 2010-10, safety improvements on various roads in Calcasieu Parish. There were one bid that was turned in by Civil Construction Company and Environmental Services. The staff recommend that the low bid in the amount of $226,795.75 of Civil Construction Company be accepted. I have a motion by Ms. Trimmy and a second by Mr. Scott. Is there any discussion? Any objection? Hearing none, item number 20 passes. Item number 21, consideration of accepting the security window replacement Office of Juvenile Justice Service as substantially complete. I have a motion by Dr. Mackey and a second by Mr. McMillan. Is there any discussion? Any objection? Hearing none, item number 21 passes. Item number 22, consideration of accepting the Allen P. August Senior Multipurpose Annex as substantially complete. I have a motion by Mr. Collins and a second by Ms. Griffin. We have discussion by Ms. Griffin.
Thank you. I want to make Mr. Bean aware of this to make sure everything runs smoothly. As you are aware, the old Allen P. August Center was located in Mr. Collins' district. It has moved now, it's in my district. I need some information before we have a grand opening, ribbon cutting, or whatever the appropriate thing is, because I have a lot of anxious constituents that's waiting for that building. Now, my question to you is, do you know when it's going to be completed so that we could move in it?
We actually went out there today to take a look at it. It's a beautiful building, if those of you hadn't seen it. There's still punch list items to be completed, but that's really it. The substantial completion will, we're really almost there, so probably within 30 days or so. And we were going to follow up and keep you informed on doing a formal ribbon cutting.
It looks real good. I was just wondering about all that dirt I saw on the north side of it. Are they going to do some landscaping, or are they going to concrete up to make it go along with the front part?
Yes, ma'am. There's still the landscaping portion of that is still to be done.
It's real. It's nice.
It's a very nice building, and that, just as a reminder, that is paid for, 3/4 of which through a state capital outlay grant from a few years back.
I remember that. Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Griffin. Thank you, Mr. Beam. Is there any discussion by the jury? I have a motion and a second. Any objection? Hearing none. Item number 22 2 passes. Item number 23,
Move on
consideration of
23.
accepting a new generation and automatic transfer switch, Calcasieu Parish Government Building, as substantially complete. I have a motion by Mr. Spell and a second by Mr. Scott. Is there any discussion? Any objection? Hearing none, item number 23 passes. At this time, we'll proceed into executive session, please.
Motion to go in.
Have a
Move
motion.
to go into
Have a motion by Mr. McMillan, a second by Mr. Stelling. Proceed into executive session. We'll now reconvene our meeting. I ask for a
Move
motion
for
to receive
recommendation to
recommendation.
accept,
Have a motion by Mr. Stelling and a second by Ms. Griffin.
Opinion of the council.
Any discussion? Any objection? Hearing none.
Second.
I ask for a motion to
Move to
adjourn at this
adjourn.
time.
Second.
I have a motion by Mr. Size and a second by Ms. Griffin.
See you, Cal.
Now adjourned.